Do you really know yourself? You might think you do, but the truth is, there's a part of you that you've never truly faced, and it controls your life far more than you realize. This hidden side is your shadow. No matter how much you try to ignore it, it's always there, shaping your choices, fueling your fears, and driving the patterns you keep repeating without even noticing. And here's the harsh truth that few dare to face. The more you pretend your shadow doesn't exist, the more power it has over you. It's behind your procrastination, your insecurities, your bursts of anger, the opportunities you sabotage, and the relationships that keep falling apart. And if you think you can just move on without dealing with it, you're only fooling yourself. You're not really in control of your life, your shadow is. But here's the most important part. Your shadow isn't just a collection of flaws. It also holds your suppressed strength, forgotten talents, and desires you never had the courage to acknowledge. Integrating it can be painful, but it's the only way to take back control of your life. Either you master your shadow, or it keeps pulling the strings from behind the scenes. In this video, you're going to face 5 brutal truths that explain why your life might not be where it should be. Number 1. Your shadow is bigger than you think. Most people underestimate what's really hidden inside them. When they hear the word shadow, they think of minor personality flaws, maybe a little impatience, slight selfishness, or a touch of pride. But the truth is, your shadow isn't just a handful of surface-level imperfections. It's a vast territory of the unconscious where traumas, repressed desires, and rejected parts of your personality accumulate over time. And the problem is, what you don't see has power over you. That's why, even when you try to be a better person, you keep falling into the same destructive patterns and making choices that you can't even explain later. If you think your shadow is insignificant, pay attention to the moments when you lose control. Maybe it's that offhand comment that irritates you way more than it should. Or the frustration you feel when someone else gets recognition you think you deserve. Maybe it's the urge to push people away who could actually help you, simply because, deep down, you don't feel worthy. Every one of these moments is a sign that something bigger is operating in the background. You can rationalize and come up with excuses for these behaviors, but the truth is, your shadow manifests in ways that are far deeper and more complex than you think. A perfect example is someone who keeps getting involved with toxic people. From the outside, the pattern is obvious, but to the person living it, it just feels like an unavoidable cycle. What they don't realize is that their shadow is making the choices for them. Maybe, as a child, they learned that love always comes with pain, so they unconsciously seek relationships that reinforce that belief. Or maybe they have a hidden need for control, so they only get involved with emotionally unstable people. The more someone runs from their shadow, the more trapped they become by it. And this goes beyond relationship. Your shadow influences your work, your self-esteem, and your daily habit. How many times have you sabotaged an opportunity because you were afraid of what might happen? How many times have you been paralyzed by perfectionism because, deep down, you fear being judged? So many people carry extraordinary talents they never explore because, at some point in their lives, they were taught to stay in their place. These unconscious beliefs shape not just your actions, but also how you see yourself. The result? You end up living inside an invisible box, not limited by what you're actually capable of, but by what you believe is possible. The problem is, what you refuse to face doesn't just go away. In fact, it grows, gains strength, and finds ways to surface, often at the worst possible moment. It's like a small leak in a foundation. At first, it's barely noticeable. But if ignored, it can bring the entire structure down. You can spend years running from what's inside you, but that escape comes at a cost. And the most dangerous part? It's not your shadow itself. It's the illusion that you can just ignore it and not face any consequences. But can you really escape something that's already a part of you? Number 2. Ignoring it won't make it disappear. If ignoring problems made them go away, no one would have unpaid bills, unresolved arguments, or past traumas that keep resurfacing. But reality doesn't work that way. What you avoid doesn't stop existing, it just finds ways to manifest beyond your control. Your shadow follows the same principle. It doesn't vanish just because you choose to ignore it. On the contrary, it gains even more power behind the scenes of your mind. Have you ever wondered why you sometimes overreact to a situation? Why certain people or comments trigger an irrational level of discomfort? It's not random. What you repress has a way of bubbling back up to the surface when you least expect it, often in the form of impulsivity, anxiety, or self-destructive patterns that keep repeating for no apparent reason. The biggest trap of the shadow is that it doesn't ask for permission to act. It infiltrates your behavior without you realizing it, influencing your decisions, your mood, and even your worldview. People who grew up hearing that they can't fail often become perfectionists, but they don't recognize that, deep down, this isn't a positive trait, it's fear disguised as discipline. Others, who learn to repress their anger, may end up exploding at the wrong moments or developing physical issues like chronic muscle tension and migraines. The mind always finds creative ways to express what has been suppressed, and when the shadow isn't faced consciously, it manifests in the most unexpected symptoms. And here's the worst part: your shadow loves to hide behind justifications. That's just how I am. It's my personality. People just push my buttons. These are nothing more than excuses masking a much deeper issue. No one is just like that. Everything you do, feel, and think is shaped by past experiences, internalized beliefs, and repressed aspects of yourself that continue to operate beneath the surface. And as long as you keep rationalizing your actions without questioning them, your shadow remains in control. It works behind the scenes, like an invisible master, guiding your decisions while you believe you're the one in charge. If you doubt this, pay attention to moments when you experience intense, unexpected emotions. That sting of envy when someone achieves something you want. The disproportionate irritation when you receive criticism. The sudden urge to procrastinate right before taking an important step. All of these might be your shadow trying to express itself. The issue isn't the emotion itself, it's how you handle it. Instead of suppressing it or pretending it doesn't exist, try to observe it. Ask yourself, what is this trying to show me about myself? This simple shift in perspective can reveal patterns you never noticed before. The truth is, your shadow will find a way to surface, whether through your behavior, your emotions, or even the way people treat you. What you refuse to face consciously, life will force you to confront in a much more painful way. The question isn't if your shadow will appear, it's how you will deal with it when it does. And trust me, the longer you delay that confrontation, the harder it will be when it finally catches up to you. Number 3. It's not just negative, it holds your greatest potential. Many people fear their shadow because they see it as nothing more than a storage place for their weaknesses, flaws, and destructive impulses. But that's only half the story. Your shadow also contains forgotten talents, genuine desires, and strengths that you or society have rejected. Maybe as a child, you were highly creative, but at some point, you were told that art doesn't pay the bills, so you buried that part of yourself. Or maybe you learned to always be nice, and in doing so, you suppressed your assertiveness. The problem is, when you deny certain aspects of your personality, you don't just eliminate the bad ones, you also erase powerful parts of who you really are. People who were taught to always be too nice often struggle to set boundaries. They fear disappointing others, but underneath that fear lies a repressed strength, the ability to stand up for themselves and go after what they truly want. Those who were conditioned to sacrifice themselves for others may have buried a natural ambition that, if reclaimed, could lead to incredible achievements. What seems like a weakness is often an untapped quality, waiting for the right moment to emerge. And that moment only comes when you start looking inward with honesty. A practical example? Many people avoid conflict because they believe that being good means never engaging in argument. But in reality, their fear of confrontation may be hiding a powerful leadership ability. The same energy used to avoid conflict could be channeled into solving problems with intelligence and confidence. Jung once said that what we reject in ourselves ends up controlling us. So instead of fighting against certain traits, try seeing them as tools you haven't yet learned how to refine. Your anger can be transformed into assertiveness. Your introspection can become a unique strength. Your shadow holds untapped resources that you don't even realize exist. Another way to recognize this is by observing what you admire in others. Often, we feel drawn to people who embody qualities we have repressed. Have you ever envied someone for being confident, bold, or creative? It could be that those same qualities exist in you but were buried over time. And what happens when you ignore your true potential? You live a life that doesn't fulfill you, follow a path that doesn't represent you, and settle for far less than what you're capable of becoming. The cost of avoiding your shadow? Mediocrity disguised as stability. Reclaiming these hidden strengths doesn't happen overnight. It takes self-awareness, courage, and a willingness to challenge old belief. Ask yourself, what were you told you couldn't be? What have you always wanted but were too afraid to express? What part of yourself did you bury out of fear of judgment? The answers to these questions may hold the key to unlocking your true potential. Number 4. You project your shadow onto others without realizing it. Have you ever noticed how certain people irritate you deeply without actually doing anything extraordinary? How some behaviors trigger an almost irrational discomfort inside you? This isn't a coincidence. Often, what bothers you most in others is a reflection of what you repress within yourself. The human mind naturally avoids looking at uncomfortable truth. So instead of recognizing these aspects within yourself, you see them in others and react with judgment, contempt, or even anger. The arrogant person who despises arrogance, the control freak who can't stand disorganization, the insecure person who dislikes those who are confident. These are all projections of the shadow cast onto the outside world. Projection acts as a psychological shield. It's easier to point out what's wrong in someone else than to admit that the same trait exists within you. That's why so many people get stuck in cycles of criticism and judgment, always annoyed by someone, without realizing they're actually at war with themselves. Want a classic example? People who resent those who have achieved financial success, labeling them as lucky or privileged, often carry hidden resentment. Deep down, they feel they could have gotten further in life but didn't take the necessary step. Instead of taking responsibility, they project that frustration onto others and create narratives to justify their own stagnation. And what about the exaggerated outrage some men express when they see two men kissing? They claim it's immoral, wrong, or against their values, but in reality, their discomfort may be a mirror of something they refuse to face within themselves. If it were truly insignificant to them, why would they waste so much energy being bothered by it? The truth is, people often fight the hardest against what they secretly fear or reject within themselves. And to avoid dealing with this internally, they look for external justifications, often using religion or tradition as shields without ever questioning them. This dynamic is also visible in relationship. Have you noticed how some people attract partners who reflect exactly what they try to avoid? Someone extremely responsible might repeatedly end up with chaotic partners because, deep down, they suppress their own need for freedom. Likewise, a submissive person may be drawn to dominant partners because they deny their own assertiveness. The shadow always finds a way to manifest, and if you don't recognize it within yourself, it will show up in others, forcing you to deal with it one way or another. The problem is that by projecting your shadow onto others, you waste a valuable opportunity for growth. Instead of using discomfort as a mirror to understand yourself, you get distracted by trying to change the outside world. And that can be a fatal mistake. The key isn't to fix others, but to understand why a certain attitude or characteristic affects you so much. If something deeply irritates you, ask yourself, what does this say about me? If someone's confidence bothers you, could it be that you wish you felt more secure too? If you feel resentment toward people who are free-spirited, could it be that you're repressing your own spontaneity? These questions may be uncomfortable, but they're essential for anyone who truly wants to grow. The truth is simple. What you reject most in others may be exactly what you need to accept within yourself. And until you acknowledge your shadow, life will keep showing it to you, through people and situations that challenge you, until you're finally ready to see it. Number 5. Integrating it is painful, but liberating. Facing your own shadow is not a comfortable experience. In fact, it may be one of the hardest challenges you'll ever face, because it means admitting inconvenient truths about yourself, accepting that you don't always act with the best intentions, and recognizing that many of your actions are driven by fear, insecurity, and repressed desires. Humans have a natural tendency to see themselves as good people, but that's only the part of themselves they allow the world to see. The hidden side, the one they even hide from themselves, holds everything they've rejected throughout their lives, and accessing that can feel like opening a box that's been locked for decades. But why is this so painful? Because confronting your shadow means facing unresolved traumas, self-sabotaging patterns, and, most importantly, accepting responsibility for your own life. It's much easier to blame others or external circumstances than to admit that, more often than not, you are your own biggest obstacle. The anger you feel toward others might actually be anger you feel toward yourself. The fear of failure might actually be fear of your own potential. Procrastination might not be laziness but rather an unconscious mechanism to avoid dealing with the pressure of becoming who you truly could be. And recognizing this demands a brutal level of honesty with yourself. The process of integrating the shadow isn't about eliminating it, it's about making it a conscious part of your life. This means transforming what once controlled you without your awareness into something you can use to your advantage. Fear can become strategic caution. Anger can be channeled into setting healthy boundaries. The suppressed desire for freedom can turn into creativity and authenticity. Everything depends on how you choose to handle what you discover about yourself, because what you face consciously can no longer manipulate you unconsciously. How do you actually do this? First, pay attention to your overreactions. Whenever you feel an irrational level of discomfort towards something or someone, ask yourself, what is this trying to show me about myself? Then, analyze your repetitive patterns. If you keep finding yourself in the same type of bad situation, it might not be bad luck. It might be your shadow leading you into places where it can express itself without you realizing it. And finally, stop judging yourself so harshly. Facing your shadow isn't about condemning yourself, it's about understanding yourself. Everyone has a hidden side. The difference between those who are trapped by it and those who learn to use it to their advantage is awareness. Facing the shadow isn't for everyone. Most people spend their lives running from it, blaming others, hiding behind excuses and beliefs that only serve to mask their own weaknesses. But running from it comes at a cost. As long as you refuse to look inward, you will continue to be manipulated by what you don't understand, sabotaging your opportunities, damaging your relationships, and living far below your true potential. It's important to emphasize that seeking professional help is a great choice. A therapist can help you identify patterns you might never see on your own and guide you through integrating your shadow in a structured and conscious way. I've created a resource that can help you start this journey. I'm not offering magic formulas or instant solutions, but a real, practical guide for those who are truly ready to understand themselves. The ebook Alchemy and Archetypes, Exploring Inner Transformation Through Jungian Psychology includes exercises that will make you reflect, question, and most importantly, take action. If you're ready for this step, you already know where to begin.